Do an audio check. Tell me if you're hearing me. Oh, yes, clearly. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to next week. We'll start this. Yeah, make you go. Put down too much here, but we don't let us. I'm a time. I'm going to
Good afternoon, all.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Always more appropriately, good evening now. Good evening again, everyone.
Yes.
My name is Davian Leslie. Let me thank you by welcoming you to this space. Let me start by welcoming you to this space and thank you for joining us here for this important discussion. Whether you're joining us by Zoom in this space here directly, or you're watching us from YouTube, or you're engaging with us on any of our social media pages, I want to thank you for finding the time and making the commitment to be a part of this discussion. I am especially pleased that so many teachers have found this discussion useful and beneficial and have decided that they will join us in this space. This evening, we're going to be focusing our discussion for a few minutes on an important issue that confronts us all, whether directly or indirectly, the issue of change. Specifically, we will be examining the extent to which universities are able to respond quickly to change, the extent to which they are able to build change into their DNA so that they are able to adapt to new environments. This evening's engagement will take the form of a panel discussion. The panel discussion will be moderated by Dr. Orville Taylor, we have different institutions represented here this evening. Representing Michael University College is Dr. Albert Benjamin. Representing the Northern Caribbean University is Dr. Lincoln Edwards. Dr. Winston Thompson is representing the Jamaica Theological Seminary, and Professor Ibrahim Ajaguna is representing the Caribbean Maritime University. Unfortunately, the University of Technology, who had every intention to attend at the last minute, were unable to attend, and they have tendered their apologies. This evening's discussion will be moderated by Dr. Taylor. Dr. Orville Taylor is a sociologist, is attached to the University of the West Indies as a lecturer and the head of the Department of Sociology. You would also know him from his heavy involvement in RJR Hotline, where he hosts the program from time to time, and he also contributes frequently and, in my mind, meaningfully and usefully to the Sunday Gleaner, where he has an article regularly. Dr. Taylor is a friend of education, and having had the pleasure of being taught by him, and also having sat in many of his presentations, I know he has not just a nimble mind, but somebody who looks out for causes that advance education. And this evening he is here in that capacity. I'm going to turn over to Dr. Taylor in a minute or two for him to take us through the discussion, but I feel it might be useful if we outline a few protocols very quickly so that we're all on the same page with respect to how this evening is likely to flow. We have 4 panelists who will respond to questions that Dr. Taylor will pose. Each panelist will have a chance at the start to share a few thoughts. As members of the audience looking on, listening in, we invite you to note questions that you may have. Towards the end of the presentation, we will allow an opportunity for you to ask questions that you may have, but we ask that you keep those questions till the end. We ask as well that you bear in mind that this is a live session that is being streamed to YouTube. It's being streamed to all of the ministries, all of the JTC social media pages. And therefore, we ask that you pay attention to your cameras. We ask that you pay attention to your microphones. At the moment, you're all muted, and I have not granted permission for you to unmute, but I know sometimes there are mishaps with cameras and so on. So I urge you to bear in mind your background. The safest thing for this session that I envision is that you keep your cameras off until perhaps you want to make a point. Then you may perhaps turn your camera on if you feel that might be useful. I encourage you to bear in mind that this discussion is meant to uplift everybody. And so your comments and questions that you may pose, whether in the chat or whether you ask those questions out loud using the mic, then that you pose those questions and comments with that in mind. On YouTube, persons will be watching and will be posting comments and perhaps even asking questions. And if those are not being addressed in this panel discussion, then possibly they might make their way into the discussion at some point, meaning we might take some of the comments and questions from YouTube and put them to the members of the panel who are here. Before I turn over to Dr. Taylor, I perhaps want to just do a quick sound check to make sure that my panelists are ready. I will begin with Dr. Benjamin. Dr. Benjamin, just checking to make sure you are there.
Yes, Devion. Again, good evening to you.
Great, excellent.
Are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you clearly. Excellent. Dr. Benjamin is from the Michael University College. Welcome.
Thank you.
Also want to check to make sure Dr. Thompson, Dr. Winston Thompson. You're muted, Dr. Thompson.
Yes, I am here.
Great, great, great. Again, welcome, Dr. Thompson.
Thank you.
Great. Dr. Thompson, as I said before, is from the Jamaica Theological Seminary. Northern Caribbean University, Dr. Lincoln. Why did your last name slip me just now, Dr. Lincoln?
Edwards.
Please forgive me, Dr. Lincoln Edwards. Great.
Yeah, pleasant good evening.
Excellent. I see the sound check is working. Great.
Yes.
Great. Professor Ajaguna, are you here? Oh, I think you're muted. I wasn't able to find you in the participant list, but I'm finding you now, and I am making you a co-host so you can unmute yourself when you wish. Are you able to unmute?
Okay. Yes, I've been able to do that. Yeah. Good evening.
Great, great.
I'm 100% with you.
Great, great, great. And Dr. Taylor, are you here?
No, I'm not. It's a philosophical position, though, but I suspect that. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Taylor, for adding some levity to the moment. Joining us as well, I'm sure, are members of the JTC staff. I know I see Mrs. Alison Cook-Hawthorne. You can just smile that lovely smile and wave, Alison. And I suspect as well that we have other members of the team, including Dr. Winsome Gordon, our Chief Executive Officer here at the Council. Towards the end, I'm sure Dr. Gordon will share a few words with you. But before I delay any longer, I really want to turn over to Dr. Taylor, who will navigate us for the rest of this evening's proceeding. Dr. Taylor, you're up.
Well, God bless you. Good evening, everyone. Yes, I don't know if I said good afternoon earlier on, but it's evening after 6 o'clock. People who are educators, and in particular people who are very well educated, quote unquote, have this tendency to talk a little bit too much. But I just want to say that I'm very, very honored to be asked to host this particular session, and it's very important to me. One, not simply because I like to pretend that I'm an educator. I'm not a trained teacher myself. Never sat in a classroom in an official capacity in a teacher's college, so I have no teaching certification. But I've been teaching at the tertiary level for more than 30 years. I have a very loyal relationship with the JTA, but one will be surprised that it's 30 years ago, I actually designed the dispute resolution system within the JTA under the leadership of Dorothy Raymond back then, and of blessed memory, I think it was Wilfred Titus. They came and they asked me to do that 30 years ago, 1990 it was. But having said that though, we know that these are very difficult times. And I'm trying to look for the one university that's having a great time right now, and I can't find that university or college or any tertiary level institution unless I close my eyes. So I have a deep appreciation for the difficulties that you all are experiencing. And so in a region where the majority of the people do not have access to tertiary level education, and for all of the work that we would have done, starting with an historical institution like the Michael University, premier in the region, we have gone so much distance, but the English-speaking Caribbean is in the hemisphere that area that has the lowest tertiary level enrollment for everything that we would have done. So it was already difficult times. The times are even more difficult as we speak. So hopefully we'll get the opportunity to hear from the esteemed gentlemen. I don't know if there's any kind of issue relating to gender balance or gender imbalance. I know my feminist and gender specialists are probably will be up in arms asking me how come there are no females. So I just want to be sure that I have all the names correctly. Lincoln Edwards, Dr. Lincoln Edwards, you're the first person that will go up, that you're speaking about 30 seconds. Professor, so is it Ajagona or Ajaguna?
Ajaguna.
Ajaguna. Okay, so is that an Igbo name?
No, it's a Yoruba name.
A Yoruba name, okay, good. And Dr. Winston Edwards, Dr. Albert Benjamin, those are English names. Quite unfortunate that I'm better able to pronounce the English names more than the African name, but we'll fix that ultimately. So without further ado, gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to speak, starting with Lincoln Edwards. So on the count of 3, sir, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Good evening to you and to all those who have tuned in. Certainly a wonderful opportunity for me to join with my fellow panelists to be here. I just want to say in opening that, refer to Dr. Peter Senge, who speaks about a learning organization in which the members are developed so that they can be agile and be able to transform the organization to become more competitive. And I believe our educational institutions, certainly during a time of crisis like this, has showed us that we need to become learning organizations where we invest in our members so that when crises come, we are agile, we are able to adapt, and we continue to serve the needs of the Jamaican people and the region, because the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization made it very clear that for developing countries to sustain development, 40 to 50% of its population should have access to tertiary education. And Jamaica having only about 17% means we are way behind. So both public and private institutions need to be empowered to play a role in the education of the Jamaican people.
And those are your 3 minutes.
I thought you said 30 seconds.
Oh no! No, in 30 seconds you would speak, but each speaker will have 3 minutes in which to speak. Sorry, Lincoln.
Oh, okay. I
yes, you have 3 minutes, each of you, 3 to 4 minutes. Sorry, but I was saying that you would come up in about 30 seconds. Sorry, my apologies.
Yes, so
that's why you see I'm not a trained teacher. That's, you understand.
But having made the point that Jamaica need all of its educational institutions to be involved in the training of its people, we have to be innovative in times of COVID. For example, the independent schools have made it very plain that they're under stress and sought government support, which was not forthcoming in any significant way. And one of the things we're talking about innovation, the government could forgive. They could forgive the debt that is owed by these independent schools. And they could ask that a portion of that debt, they could set aside a portion of that, even though it's they have forgiven it, but they can, when they have their savings, they could set aside a portion to build dormitories on campus with the aim of attracting overseas students that are able to come to Jamaica. Because when those students come here, they do not go back home for spring break. They go to the hotels, they spend money, they have to live, so the local economies benefit from that. And right now, I know that the University of the West Indies has a program where the students from the United States can use their federal grant to attend UWI. That we need to be more collaborative. So a program like that should be sold to all the other schools so that we can benefit from exercises like that. Because when those students come, particularly in a time like now where Black young men are under duress in the United States, and we know very well much was written about the fact that Martin Luther King came to Jamaica to recover, and he wrote most of his books from Jamaica. So that we need to collaborate to ensure that all these independent schools are able to benefit from a program like that, and Jamaica itself will benefit, tourism will benefit, the local economies will benefit, and we can have a transformation in our economy that we never envisioned prior to COVID-19.
Well, thank you, Dr. Gordon.
Edward.
You know, yeah. What did I just say, call you a while ago?
Gordon.
Yes, I'm so sorry. See, having these Freudian slips. Before I go to the next speaker, though, I wanted to hit us in our head and for us to keep it there. As we struggle through all kinds of issues, but in particular these social pathologies, you know, such as violence and homicide, one of the single most important variables when you're talking about reducing the proclivity towards violence and crime is post-secondary education. So even one single year, additional year, of post-secondary education is statistically significant when you are drawing up the models in terms of a propensity towards violence. Isn't that amazing, gentlemen and the ladies who are listening? I know we have more ladies in the audience. Let me acknowledge you. I want to acknowledge the teachers from all over Jamaica. I'm seeing, I don't want to call in the names, but some schools that I've never heard of yet. But I'm very happy that you are representing yourselves and your community here. So I will now go to Professor Ajaguna.
Thank you very much, Dr. Taylor, and to the other panelists and those that are listening to us. Ovi said at the beginning of his discussion that he doesn't know any educational institution now that is happy or romancing with what is happening around us. The coronavirus is with us, and we don't know how long this is going to stay with us. And it has forced us as educational institution to leapfrog rather than what I would say, which is also the caption of this discussion here, hop, skip, and jump. Because we never believed that educational institutions could respond as quickly as we have over the past few months, experiencing this pandemic. And the first speaker actually hit the point that this is the time for us as educational institutions to cooperate and to collaborate and to share resources in whatever way that is possible. The coronavirus, as indicated in the issue that is raised, is that it has forced us seriously into what we probably not thinking of initially, that is the fourth industrial revolution, which is seriously having an impact on the principles of learning from primary to secondary and tertiary institutions. Now, the problem is overwhelming, if I should say, not only to the parents, but also to the students. I cite a good example. We have foreign students at the university, and the first speaker spoke to attracting overseas students. We have about 10 Chinese students that should have been back with us now, but due to coronavirus, they have not been able to come back to us. But notwithstanding, we still have to reach to them. In China, we have Peruvians that have been here with us from September last year. They have not been able to go back home. We have to respond to their needs. Importantly is the fact that the new technology, the fourth industrial revolution, has and will continue to impact education at various levels across the globe, if I should say. The question is, how can we bridge the perceived information gap and provide insight into the kinds of educational preparation and the skills and qualifications that the fourth industrial revolution jobs require, because we are preparing students for the industry and the work world. In response to that question, we may need to consider certain factors as educational institutions. It therefore means that we need to begin to tweak and rewrite our curriculum to fit this new wave of technology that we are forced to adapt in totality, because many educational institutions, especially the University of West Indies, and partially here, we have been reaching our students using this type of modality before coronavirus. And forcefully, we have to adapt to the right technology for in-class and online delivery. Many times we speak about online delivery. You can imagine, Dr. Taylor, how difficult it is to have 60 students online, probably participating in different activities apart from the classroom interaction. And there is also the need for the projection of other learning techniques and skills that are often not considered that is pertinent. The advent of smart communication system, for example, involving artificial intelligence, internet, robotics, virtual reality, and digital textbook has opened a new vista in relation to how and what is learned in schools. And just as technologies brought about smart communications system, the fourth industrial revolution is bringing to us a model of higher education that is rapidly evolving. And as a result of that, curriculum development, curriculum review must be dynamic, and it must keep pace with the technological advances and skills that are required in this century. Importantly, the fourth industrial revolution era will bring great changes to how students are taught and what students must learn, as the tools for transformational learning are already overwhelming. Can we continue to go? In fact, for the past few years, we talk about the whiteboard, we talk about the blackboard, we talk about Schoology, we talk about the different modes of delivery, but we never actually bought into this wholesale. But now Corona has forced us into this. Importantly, there is the point I will also like to make, that the policy of government must surely be to allow education to keep pace with new technology. And to do this, computers and other necessary facilities must be made widely available in schools to enhance proficiency. I give you a practical example. When this thing came upon us, about 20% of our students never had access to internet, and another 20% never had laptop computers. They depended on the face-to-face classroom interaction. And this is where the government plays an important role in how we advance education. I must say, however, that the little that the Ministry of Education is doing in providing laptop, computers and tablets to our children is laudable. And also to comment on the Universal Service Fund that has been making that provision across Jamaica, so that rural area students and lecturers will have access to internet service. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much. Well, you used your 3 minutes. Dr. Edwards from the JTS, mic is yours now, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Taylor. And I am feeling somewhat in a good company. You're at least allowing me to borrow the name of a distinguished panelist, Dr. Lincoln Edwards. For the moment, though, just for transparency and certainly some type of honesty, I would suggest that my name is Winston Thompson instead of Edwards. And yes,
Oh.
I represent Jamaica Theological Seminary.
Okay, thank you for the correction. Yes.
Not to worry, my attorney will send you an invoice.
I'll make sure that I have a wrong address though.
Okay. Let me thank you and the Jamaica Teaching Council for the invitation to join this panel this evening and to participate in the conversation, which I believe is a very useful conversation, very timely, particularly because of the times in which we are living and the challenges that come with these new situations confronting us. The title itself for the discussion this evening is also very timely. It is really prodding the mind and allowing us to be thinking and to provide us with an opportunity to exemplify certainly some of the responses that COVID is forcing upon us. When I look at the title, for example, and to see hop, skip, and jump, and I listened to a previous speaker, Dr. Ajaguna, talking of leapfrogging, I can see definitely the connection in hopping and skipping and jumping. Certainly leapfrogging is fitting as to what it is we are forced to do with the challenges coming to us with COVID-19. But then the extension in the title of this evening's forum on agility is also very penetrating, very stimulating, and provocative, because as educational institutions, we certainly have the tendency to be conserving, to be traditionalists, and to be somewhat preserving what it is we have known for a long period of time. And certainly with the challenge that came with us through COVID, we are forced to be somewhat agile. Agile in the sense of skipping and hopping and jumping, while at the same time attempting to maintain quality in what we do. And certainly for those of us who understand what quantity means for enrollment purposes, we are forced to be thinking as to how we can maintain that element, that dimension of our operations. And of course, the currency piece to the title is also instructive for us. Now, as I think about contributing to the conversation, I thought that I would at least begin by suggesting that what might be a good place to begin as we respond to the challenge presented by COVID in this time is to be focusing, perhaps not the only thing, but a very important aspect of what we do, which would be professional development for our staff, for our colleagues, for those of us who are leaders. Think seriously about how we will provide professional opportunities for those individuals on our teams that might not be such inclined previously to be engaging the technology that we are forced upon to be using. And as I make that suggestion about the professional development, certainly the requirement would be for us to be intentional about what it is we seek to accomplish, how it is that we seek to pursue and implement professional development activities for our staff. And I think there are three motivations for us to consider when we are thinking along the lines of professional development activities. One is the innovation that seems to be beckoning for us to continue to be agile and to continue to maintain quality and certainly currency. innovation in the sense that we are obliged to find ways and means of doing what it is we know to do in a different way, but at the same time maintaining our traditions. And that, I believe, is what will allow us to remain current. Current in the sense that we are not leaving anything behind us. We are carrying, but we are also allowing ourselves to be relevant to the moment, for the times. And I believe that as we give serious consideration to professional development, innovation really should be one of the objectives, one of the targets we set for ourselves, to make certain that that which we know to do traditionally, we can now do them in different ways, dynamic ways, relevant ways that would allow us to maintain some level of quality in what we do. Also in the sense of creativity. I think this is something that we should also be giving attention to. Yes, the innovation is understood, but creative in the sense of making that which is not become a reality. You know, creating, putting in place that which does not exist. And for us, with the challenge of COVID, and of course, the technology that seems to be calling and beckoning us for usage, I think that the creative approaches and the creative juices should really be flowing on our teams to make certain that what we are doing is done in a way that is special, done in a way that is dynamic, done in a way that is, as I said, creative, making it happen, making it come into fruition, into being in a way that is captivating and in a way that is certainly holding the attention of those that we seek to serve. And then finally, for the professional development, not only for us to be focusing on innovation and creativity, but also to be certain to include strategies for collaboration. Collaboration in the sense of members of our individual institutional teams, but also collaboration across institutions. So that in my case, being a representative of Jamaica Theological Seminary, and all that it suggests and implies, in this time, in these challenging moments, working with sister universities, institutions, and allow us at JTS really to advance, to transcend our boundaries, and allow us to be more instrumental and innovative and creative and productive with these individuals we seek to serve. So collaboration is something that needs to be considered as we attempt to engage in professional development activities. And firstly, we begin with that on our teams, but also transcending institutional boundaries to draw on the resources of our colleagues outside, so that indeed, as a team, as a group, as a culture, we can continue to serve the Jamaican population in the way we know best to do so, so that, of course, in the end, we can say we have done our part in nation building in spite of the challenges, and allow ourselves to be instrumental in pursuit of the objectives we established for ourselves. That indeed would be the beginning statements I would make to this discussion this evening, and I look forward to continued conversation, sharing other ideas and hearing from others on the panel as well.
Boy, I tell you, you make me sound like I would need to come across the street and look at work over your place.
Not a problem. The doors are open.
Yeah, all right. I appreciate it. Thank you. So the next speaker, of course, gentlemen, I'm going to be asking you a couple of questions. I'll try to make them as brief as possible. But I have Dr. Benjamin Albert, and quite interesting. I see Albert there and see people from Wassop. So I want to ask him Wassop because Albert town is nearby. So I don't know if the town is named after you, sir. not taking me on, is he?
He's muted.
No. Well, the mic, it actually works when you unmute it, you know, Albert.
Yes, I'm saying that I was named after my father. I wasn't named after the entire town. No. Yes.
Okay. Well, who knows? You know, maybe. All I gotta ask is, what's up? Anyway, all right. I see. Oh, you're sharing screen, so you actually have a PowerPoint for us. All right.
Yes.
Yes. I have a switch. I have a watch though here.
All right. Yes, I'm also timing myself. So I hope you give me back my time. So I begin now.
All right. Yes. Bless you.
Okay. Greetings, colleagues, members on the panel. I want to also greet Dr. Winsome Gordon, good friend of mine, and Dr. Taylor. I listen to you whenever I get a chance. I can't say I listen to you regularly because, of course, that would mean I would be at work. But whenever I get a chance, I do spend some time listening to you. Yes, hop, skip, and jump. That sounds to me like a triple jump term. But as we all know, you don't get to be a good triple jumper by beginning with the hop, skip, and jump. You have to have a run-up first. And so we did not get here by beginning with COVID. We have been here and we've all been dealing with the various challenges of education over the years. But I want to quickly provide a sort of interpretive paradigm for, well, certainly for the way that we look at it at the Micro University College. And you can see from my initial slide here that we've been through a number of eras. And I want to say that where we are now really is the post-modern era. I missed my second slide. I want to go back to it to tell you what I want to say in the 3.5 minutes I plan to take. So I want to use post-modernism as an interpretive paradigm. I want to talk about the customer citizen in that setting. I want to talk about the implications for education, list of national, regional, and institutional responses, including the MICAs, and tell you a little bit about a trip that Dr. Pinnock and I went on to India and the UK to see what lessons they learned and how we can implement them here in Jamaica. So postmodernism I want to focus on in this slide, because I want to just focus on the main areas, is an age of globalization, social movements, mass media, digitality, urbanization, late capitalism, holism, and interdependence. This is where we are. It's important to think about where we are in the scheme of things, because the thinking that brought us here, remember I said we did not begin with a hop, skip, and jump. The thinking that brought us here is what's going to allow us to interpret even COVID to move forward. And generally, postmodernism is about skepticism, irony, or rejection towards what is described as the grand narratives and ideologies. I want to quickly go through this to point out that one of the things that postmodern thinking does, they criticize universalist ideas of objectivity, reality, morality, truth, human nature, reason, science, language, and social progress. I don't want to say this, but I think it'll make the point because I don't have a lot of time. Think of modernity, think of Donald Trump. These are our postmodern citizen clients. And when I say, I'm talking about persons like myself that are involved in higher education, all the panelists here. These are our clients who we want to help us, certainly in terms of the Micro University College, to make citizens of the persons who are now in the postmodern era. And they themselves, as you can see, in some aspects from this picture, represent those characteristics that we spoke of earlier. We have another term that will help us to think about the citizen client, who we're working with, because if we're talking about quality and quantity and so on, those are just terms. But we want to talk about people. We want the Micro University College, certainly, we train teachers. And we have to have an understanding of where we're situated in the history and sequence of things, as well as who it is that we're working with. And so what we actually are working with, that what we refer to as the Generation Zs. I don't know where you fall, Dr. Taylor, but I have some images here, and we see the baby boomers.
I'm a pre-independence child.
There you go.
I give you back your 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you. We have Barack Obama as Generation X. We have Generation Y as Zuckerberg, and we see Gen Z there, our own. Coffee. So I want you to just get in your mind where we are really situated. Now, the thing about it is that these eras that I spoke about, the postmodern era coming, the modern era coming to the postmodern era, and even moving through forward, globalization has been layered over into the postmodern era. And it is being essentially fueled by technology and of course the interests of the super capitalists listed in that in the image to the right, to the left, sorry. We have also had 4 industrial revolutions. You've heard us talk about the matter. We're now in the 4th one, which we abbreviate as 4th IR. And you can see over here, we're talking about things like Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, big data, cloud, and cyber physical systems. Words associated with 4IR, digitization, smart city. And this one down here, I like to focus on disruption. So this is where we are. Some of the examples that we see in terms of the postmodern setting, we're talking about media being quite different from what we've been accustomed to. We know of CVM and TVJ and all these American media houses, but if you look over here, what media is moving to from modern to postmodern thing is not anybody can publish anything at any time. And you see how sometimes you see information in social media before you get to see it on TVJ. These are some of the things that have impacted education. AI in education, there is actually a company online that actually is able to provide you with a virtual and artificial intelligence tutor, which can actually plan out a whole scheme of learning for somebody as an artificial intelligence tutor. AR, talk about augmented reality, where you can be in a room with your phone, you're seeing some objects in your room, but your phone can put an imaginary object in that space when you look at it through the phone. And there's some other areas here, virtual reality. There's an online space called Class VR that is showing how to use virtual reality in the classroom. And Internet of Things, there's an online portal called Kahoot that allows you to assess using the Internet of Things. So we have moved into a situation where on the right-hand side, for it to be a world-class system, education system, all students need to learn at high levels. We have to embrace complex ways of thinking, complex ways of doing, collective capacity, high level of professional knowledge workers. Work organizations tend to be flat and accountability primarily to peers and stakeholders. Now you see over here the contrast, primary to authorities, hierarchical organizations, etc. I'm trying to run through this to get to use my time efficiently. Now, the thing about it is that over these periods that I've glossed over, essentially, we have seen education lagging behind technology. And technology has been the key thing to move us into the current revolution. There have been 3 more, so that's why we have now talking about number 4. But initially what you have in terms of the first, well, industrial revolution rather, industrial revolution, what you tend to have is technology going ahead, and behind it, education comes. And in between, while education is catching up, you have social pain. That's a given. But over time, the education catches up and overshoots the technology, while technology tends to remain the same for a few years. But then as it starts to catch up again, you get back to a place. So where we are now is we're actually having the digital revolution ahead of education. And as such, we're experiencing social pain. COVID really and truly is accelerating this process. This is not the thing that we didn't begin here. It wasn't a hop, skip, and jump. We were going on like this before I see Dr. Taylor telling me that I've run over my time. So I want to just rush down to the end to see if I can give you a couple of updates from the Mike University College. So we felt that we had to shift or change the way that we educate teachers in Jamaica. And we, based on our research, believe that STEM education was the way to go. And so we did a study tour in January to February of this year. We went to National STEM Learning Center in the UK and the Homi Bhabha Center for Science Education in India. And you can see that later on the left is the dean of the Homi Bhabha Center that I mentioned that we went to. So we went there and did a study tour. And when we came out of the study tour, we confirmed the following. If you're going to be able to bring our citizens into a space that we can all respond to the realities of the 4th industrial revolution, to the issue of COVID, we are going to have a STEM ecosystem set up in this country. Based on where we went and looked at, it would not be feasible to sustain and drive a national growth STEM focus without explicit policy and specific institutional support. Teacher-centered continuous professional development is central to the central pillar of successful national growth, centered STEM projects. Successful national STEM models maintain close linkages with institutions and best practices in cutting-edge technologies. Is the collaboration we heard about before. There needs to be joint private sector and government funding models, which are going to be critical for national growth in STEM programs. We see examples of that in the case of, in the UK, Rolls-Royce helps to fund the National Center. And in the case of India, the Tata Foundation does that funding. And I have quite a bit more to say, but as you can see, my time is way up. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's all right. You know, the interesting thing about postmodernism, and for me, what has lasted with me about postmodernism is that there is nothing that is anything. Yes. And we call it the incredulity of the meta-narrative, meaning that everything that you think that you know, you don't really know. And which is why when you asked at the beginning of this program how I was, I said, well, where I am. I didn't even know, because I don't know if I'm here. But the wonderful thing about postmodernism, people, is that it is a tool that makes you ask yourselves the questions first. Because if you haven't asked yourself the question first, then you can't really provide an answer to anybody. So you need to get to that level. And we all, and not necessarily you, of course, I'm also having these conversations within myself. So the first sign of insanity is talking to yourself, but that's not quite true. The second one, even that is not true when you answer back. But the third one is speaking to yourself, answering back, and still not understanding what you're saying. Then you know you're really gone. So I have some questions though for each of you, and I've come to an understanding, and in particular, Albert, when I heard you speak about technology and innovation, and technology and change are so closely related. I know that when one speaks of innovation, one is almost always referring to technology. So I want you to answer me. Do you think that culture and the structure of tertiary institutions, do they enable or they constrain the innovation as in terms of how they deal with this new reality?
Well, there are constraints, Dr. Taylor, I will agree. But I think I think if we look at the tertiary system as part of a broader ecosystem, as I mentioned before, the constraints are all over the process. So for example, we have in Jamaica, the NSC curriculum. And you know that curriculum is STEM centered. As I mentioned before, this is one of the critical paradigms that will be useful in helping us to be the kind of culture, the kind of country that thinks through complex problems and is able to enter in a meaningful way into the economy. But then you have at the early years level, the traditional curricula, and you also have at CSEC, you have another subject-centered traditional arrangement. So while you might want to have an innovation, and you know, teachers pay a lot of attention to assessment formats and assessment regimes and so on. And so while you may want to have a teacher who is well-versed on the STEM methodologies and so on, when they find themselves either in the pre-tertiary, well, in the pre-tertiary area of early education or in the secondary area, there is that tug of war. And that's part of where the constraint comes in. The curricula set up a kind of a constraint in the system. The curricula set up a kind of a constraint.
Right.
In addition to which, the national ICT policy, which you probably are familiar with, we have been rolling this on for better part of the last 20 years now. That policy perhaps needs us to take a careful look at it to see if it is still relevant after all this time.
All right. I particularly want an answer from Professor Ajaguna, bearing in mind the fact that of all of the institutions represented here, you are the most technical one. You're the one that actually has to deal with, you know, all of these new technologies on a day-to-day basis. So you want to give me a perspective in regard to that question? It works when you turn the mic on here, Prof.
Thank you very much.
Yes, yes.
Probably you're
dating yourself here?
Pardon me?
Because the youngsters would know immediately that you should turn the thing on, eh? But it's all right. I will see in a moment. But you're on the other side of 50 and etc. We know.
Thank you very much. All
right.
Yes, you are quite correct because the CMU is the center of simulators for the Caribbean, if I should say. The number of simulators we have here run into millions of Jamaican dollars. Probably the point you want me to highlight here is how we need to re-engineer ourselves or re-engineer higher education to meet the needs of the new normal as it is described. For example, COVID has brought about the need to rethink the role and deliverables of higher education faster than we had expected. I'll give you a practical example here at the World Economic Forum, which was in 2019. The need to re-engineer higher education to become more effective for students, educators, and employers was clearly emphasized. And for this to happen, special attention must be paid to a number of factors. And this is what we have been doing here at the university. And these factors include skill acquisition-based curriculum. It is no longer the order of the day to go to the university, get a degree, and begin to look for a job. What many of our educational institutions are doing today is that we are still creating a skill for yesterday jobs. And this is what we try to run away from at the university here. We go in the industry, we walk from the industry back to the classroom or to our lab to respond to industry's needs. And it is important that in doing this, we need to inspire young people to follow what one of the panelists spoke to earlier on: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which has been a buzzword for some time now, STEM. There is also the need, and which we have been employing here, compressing years spent on degree acquisition. It is no longer the normal thing now to say a child must spend 4 years at an educational institution. And what this new era is bringing to us, the fourth industrial revolution is bringing to us, is a child may be able to complete a bachelor's degree in 2.5 to 3 years because you study from home, you have your summer to engage yourself in your study activities. In fact, many educational institutions in the United States now, when you register into your undergrad program, they actually register you into your master's degree. Wow. Because before you complete your first degree, you can begin to take classes at the master's level. Equally, we try to reduce the prominence. Yes. Yes, we're trying to reduce the prominence of credentials because it has become the order of the day that you apply for a job, they need a number of years experience, they want you to have a first class. Many companies no longer look for that. They're looking for a skill. What can you do? What problem can you solve? And that is what the industry is focusing on now. There is also industry university collaboration. We are a small institution and we also cater to a small segment of the industry, which is the shipping industry. And there is need for constant and continuous collaboration between us and this educational institution. And I must say that it is a fair assessment to say that COVID-19 has hastened the adoption of remote learning in tertiary institutions, and by doing so has forced educational institutions at all levels to go in a direction that they should have found on their own for the longest time.
You answered about 3 questions at the same time. Yeah?
Thank you very much, Avi. And also,
we're going to go up a little bit. So I actually want to ask Lincoln Edwards a question, though. Because I want to hone this question specifically to his institution, but I'm sure that it can extrapolate outwards. We know that technology, as it stands now, has released education from the confines of time and space. Explain to me what kind of impact has it had on your institution? And from that, having spoken about your institution, how would you extrapolate from that in regard to the future of campus-based learning? You know, given that most of the accredited institutions, and there are 4 in this country that are institutionally accredited, and another one that's about halfway there. Now, So explain to me, given all of this, that it's a shifting sand, so it's not, you move now within time and space, everything is very fluid. Is this a challenge that your university is facing, or you're seeing it as an opportunity?
Well, thank you for that question, Dr. Taylor. Just permit me, before I answer that question, just to refer to something you said earlier. You mentioned the importance of at least 1 year of tertiary education or so to impact crime, which is so critical to the Jamaican society. And at NCU, we have a program called RESCUE. It's an acronym for Restoring Every Student's Confidence Using Education.
Yes.
And what happens in that program is that we ask civic organizations, including churches, to identify young people in their environment who are at risk to be influenced by criminal element, and to provide some kind of support and send those students to NCU, where they get a values-based education underpinned by strong work ethic and an emphasis on service. And what we have found, the transformation that occurs with those young people on the program, of course, we check out their background and we do. But when you see students who were once participating in activities that none of us would condone, come now to an institution and become transformed to the extent that they are using inherent talent to become winners of global competitions or even local football or other competitions that as a university we never won before. But these students have come, they have integrated, they have been transformed, and they are now ambassadors to go back to their communities to say to their friends, you don't have to live that lifestyle. You don't have to be involved in scamming or gangs or so. There is another way. There is a way to inspire young people. And I just wanted to comment on what you said earlier, to say that that is happening. And we encourage, in terms of collaboration, for every institution to have a rescue program, even though some institutions have it in other forms. But we encourage this as a means of a national attempt to put a stranglehold on crime and improvement. But you ask in terms of technology.
Mm-hmm.
What technology has done is increase access. Because over the years, traditionally, many of the students who come to Northern Caribbean University are students who would otherwise be rejected by traditional systems because they didn't have resources. And what we have done over the years is we used to have we have a strong work study program, much stronger in former years. But the students would come without resources. We can't do that now because things have changed. But they would come, they would work on the farm or in the industries on the campus. They would earn money, and then they would take classes in the afternoon. And that has provided access. Now what technology has done is provide access now, so people in the comfort of their homes can pursue a tertiary education. So
yes.
universities.
Yeah, I've heard that. Gentlemen, honestly, I'm ambivalent because
Yes,
I'm an educator myself, or I pretend to be one, and I'm faced with the same kinds of challenges in the large plantation upon which I work. On the one hand, we see the opening up of supposedly new opportunities, greater access. Some of the individuals who had difficulties coming to school, etc., are now able to get involved with remote learning, etc. But we do know, and those of you who have spent more time in pedagogy and all of that, the techniques of teaching and learning, understand that there are some individuals who, no matter how hard you try, are not going to learn very well, or they're going to be at some kind of an intellectual disadvantage by using the remote method of teaching. That's one.
right.
Separate up, then you have all of those sociological kinds of issues which have to do with your socioeconomic background, as well as things like your finances. You may have the technology, you may be able to buy the phone, but you might not be able to buy the credit, or you might live in such a location that you can't get the kind of internet access, even if you could buy the credit. So there's an anecdote, real story though, of a number of students from Western Jamaica, from across the border in St. James, but way out of Montego Bay, who were allowed to come onto the campus at the Western Jamaica campus for the UWI to get internet access, still practicing the physical distancing, etc. Because where they live, they just don't have internet access for all of that. So my question is,
but Dr. Taylor, there are solutions to those things, you know. For example, I said there are solutions. For example, Northern Caribbean University is allied to a network of churches, the Seventh-day Adventist Church. We have over 730 churches scattered across almost every community in Jamaica.
Okay. Yes.
Those churches now can function as access points.
Yes.
9%
of the population in Jamaica say they are Seventh-day Adventists, actually.
But it's not just
that's amazing.
Yes, but we are not restricting it to Adventists. We are saying any student in the community.
No, I got that, you know, I understood that. But
it's go to an Adventist church. So we're talking about a public-private partnership where private funds can ensure that these churches, and not just Adventist church, but any church, can have internet access, and the students can go there. Not only will the internet access, but the church members are themselves educators, and some can provide guidance to these students. So if they're having challenges, they can mentor them. So we can have a whole new family relationship in the country that we never had before. So there are wonderful opportunities that COVID has unmasked, and we need to grasp those as a people.
Yes. Dr. Thompson.
Yes, sir.
I want to tell me a little bit more about the experience of your institution in terms of this issue of marginalization of students.
Well, our experience is nothing dissimilar to what others are faced with. And what we find ourselves having to do is to be rethinking the way we have been accustomed to be doing things. And in making that statement, I may go back to the first question you posed to Dr. Benjamin about culture and what that could possibly create, the challenge that could come from that with regards to how we do what we know to do.
Yes.
And in my mind, it seems to me that the problem is not so much the culture, or maybe the way to enter that conversation is to talk about the individuals who exhibit the culture. Because my mind is telling me that if we have individuals who are capable of engaging and exhibiting the characteristics of what education is meant to do, then we wouldn't allow the culture to really keep us or enslave us, but we would be shaping and reshaping and innovating within the culture and allowing for resocialization and other developments to happen while we face the challenges and seek to allow ourselves to be current and to maintain the quality that we are required to maintain accreditation and so on and so forth. But so for us at JTS, we are attempting to make the adjustments, even though some of us members of the team tend to be, you know, somewhat reserved in meeting the challenges. You know, we are dragging, we are not immediately responsive enough. We are allowing the situation to force us as opposed to embracing it and seeing it in terms of what Dr. Edwards referenced a while ago as an opportunity. You know, I mean, we tend to very often tend to allow ourselves to be hamstrung with the culture and the traditions, as opposed to saying, how can I do this thing in a different way and drive boredom from our lives and allow ourselves to remain excited about what it is that we're doing. And that's the kind of discussion and conversation that I, as a representative and a leader of my team, is forcing my members to be engaged with at this time.
And that this takes me to an old debate, but at the same time, it's a debate that has, I think, come back to the front. So you have this kind of this click versus brick dichotomy, where click referred to the learning delivered using virtual platforms for distance education, and of course, a brick representing the old time traditional structure in the brick and the mortar, right? Bearing in mind what looks like the new reality for the foreseeable future, because I've got the impression that for some institutions, the virtual world is going to be what teaching is going to be based on, and the face-to-face is going to perhaps be the minority form of delivery. Is this debate at this point settled? Are we really going to be moving more, you think? Speaking individually for your institution, as well as speaking generally again. And I want a minute, 30 seconds from each of you. Do you think it is resolved one way or the other?
Well, if I may take that
yes.
first job at it. Okay, I think it's resolved. If we're thinking about it in the context of industrial revolutions, the fourth industrial revolution is here, and each revolution has technology has been at the center of moving us forward. And we've always seen it as peripheral states that we do not tend to have the option of ignoring the general trends across central states. We are probably going to have to adapt teaching and learning and many other ways of living to the realities that are confronting us and that are being accelerated through NCOV. Now, I'll say in terms of quickly from the point of view of the Micro University College, how we have experienced this accelerant, I'm gonna call it, COVID-19. We are about to first of all shift to a mindset of thinking not of technology as supporting the face-to-face classroom, but as technology being the classroom itself. Okay. Technology is the classroom. Now, our strategic plan of 2019, 2022, we had planned not to move into any more brick. We said we're going to go click to expand our offerings because we had in our vision that we want to impact the Caribbean. And so it was a plan from then. And so the infrastructure had started to be put together. We in fact created a micro online as part of our overall institutional infrastructure. Way back from matter of fact, before 2019, we started to work on it. And so when it came into March of this year, what we had to do was to expand capacity. We already had persons, we had a director of online, we had Moodle administrators, we had tech support, much smaller. But what we had to do when the pandemic hit was to expand capacity. All our first years had already been trained to use the online platform, the Moodle online platform, and the Zoom associated support. Our lecturers had been trained incrementally, but then we had to move to a space to train everybody. All and right. So after that, we move. We're also in the long jump. We're on the run up. But we had not skip and jump yet. But COVID pushed us into that space. And so because of our strategic plan, we see ourselves as embracing the online modalities going forward in some way or the other.
All right, got you. I was trying to figure out, just a second. Yes. Lincoln, I was trying to figure out how we can incorporate, because we have gone over time, but to incorporate some of the questions that the other persons in cyberspace, would want to raise. Now, I would invite you to put some questions in the chat. Those will be perhaps easier to manage because we do have more than 330 people in this meeting. So I can't imagine how I'd be able to monitor getting a question from every individual. So I have a question here. I like the rescue initiative. It has a great potential to bring communities together. And then somebody says, what does rescue stand for? RESCUE. I like the initiative. That's yours.
Restoring every student's confidence using education.
That sounds like it's a sociologist who would give that one to you. Am I right?
Well, it's a group of us came together and came up with the acronym.
Okay. So like, it's a shameless plug for the people where I might have to. All right. I'm looking for the raise hand feature and not seeing it in this one here. I don't know.
Dr. Taylor, I don't know
Yes,
if you're
go
hearing.
ahead. Yes.
Krishna has her hand up. I suppose she might have a question.
Okay. All right,
allow her
please.
to unmute and she can go
I
ahead.
can't see from here. I don't know if it's because I'm over 50 as well.
I can monitor that for you.
Please do that for me. Yes. Let me take the first one.
Krishna, if you can unmute, you can go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Krishna is perhaps having a problem with her technology, but
yes, the hand up. Yeah, that I'm seeing now. Yes. So unmute. Krishna? Yeah, but her mic is muted still though, and her video's up. I'm not sure what's happening there.
There's a question in the chat as well from Oral. Oral Lawson is asking, what are the plans to accommodate students who do more technical subjects, such as woodwork, for example?
Yes.
I don't know.
I think
answer that one now.
If
I
I
think it's a micro question. Huh?
Okay, no problem. Well, at this point in time, we observe the international higher education landscape, and we're noticing that in order to have students on the campus physically, whether it is to live on the campus or to carry out activities such as woodwork, we would require an extensive regime that would have to include regular testing. And so where it is absolutely necessary, we can't afford to implement as rigorous a testing regime that as we've observed in higher education abroad. So where it is absolutely necessary, however, the Micro University College is prepared to schedule events to allow for practical events, to schedule time to allow for practical events to take place. So, but I'd say this quickly though. Whereas we perhaps think to ourselves that practical areas cannot be done without being in a certain space. And I know that there are some that we take it for granted. Yes, there are some that are just like that. But the fact of the matter is that what we're also saying is that we have never done it before. And so again, we're at a place that we may very well need to now begin to innovate, to think, how can we teach practical subjects without the customary arrangements that have been put in place, and also perhaps to look at whether or not some of the practical aspects that we teach are actually relevant. And you may want to therefore, modify, review curricula to now see within the context that we find ourselves, what do we absolutely need, break it down to the bare, what we absolutely have to teach, and then some of it we may very well be able to manage in another way.
Yes. That came to me because I had to answer a series of questions personally because I'm the head of my department, because I got a pushback from my principal through my dean because we had clinical training in psychology for a group of 8 students, 8. But we had taken the decision that we're not going to be having any kind of face-to-face delivery for the semester. However, the explanation, and I'm happy that the principal finally accepted it, was that to be teaching clinical psychology at the master's level, right? There's no way in which you could be teaching that outside of that face-to-face. Now, I was having got that answer and having seen the answer now to the question relating to woodwork, I'm thinking of an entity like Heart NTA. So where you have these schools that are ostensibly hands-on. So what will happen then going forward, since these are institutions where people are doing these things, not with high levels of practical involvement? So how do you teach garment making, and how do you fit those garments onto individuals, etc. How do you teach cooking and hospitality and all of those things? I don't know, right? And these are real questions. So, you know, like the teachers who are teaching home economics and those other kinds of subjects as well might have those kinds of answers. But it's a question I'm asking for myself.
Well, that's what the innovation begins. I will say, you know, Dr. Taylor, it begins with asking the question, which we have never had to ask before. And so I'm just saying as well that part of the reason why we have to answer the question, not just ask them, is because the 1918 pandemic lasted a whole year. Yes. And so if unless we're going to be risking our lives to teach what we have to teach, we will have to figure out how do we not lose a whole year, because to lose an entire year of schooling is a big deal. How do we avoid losing an entire year while at the same time getting some aspect of the progress we know we need still going forward? That's what we're facing. That's what COVID has done. We have to now answer the questions.
All right. I see a question here from the JTC YouTube page from Vivian Dyer. My question then is, what will be done to fashion the current curriculum to allow for the incorporation of social initiatives instead of allowing them to utilize only the click aspect of the academia? That's yours, Winston.
You repeat that question for me. What is what?
It says, what will be done to fashion the current curriculum to allow for the incorporation of social initiatives instead of allowing them to utilize only the click aspect of academia?
I think that the challenge would be for us as practitioners, leaders, to basically allow the mind, the creativity and the innovation to be put to work, where we find ways to connect the dots, so that if the pieces are necessary for the quality we are pursuing, then we would be forced to find the ways. And one of the suggestions that I would make, for example, in this regard, is to suggest that we find partners outside the walls of the institution, where we can collaborate with entities, social agencies outside. I think I like some of the ideas presented by Dr. Edwards earlier, where churches can be engaged. And I would imagine other community agencies could also be engaged in collaboration with the academy. I know we have very often maintained the distance between town and gown, but I believe that this environment provides for us an opportunity for both to be brought together in creative and innovative ways to meet the needs of students. That would be a place that I would begin to at least think about a resolution or an answer to that question.
All right. I see another one here. I missed this one, but it's an extremely important one. What I'm hoping, I think something is missing from it, but we'll get it anyway. What opportunities can we take advantage of in areas of special education and physical disability education? That's a general one for anybody.
Well, the Mike University College is, of course, known for special education.
Yes.
And we have both a care center as well as a area of our faculty of education that deals with special education. We had included in our curricula since a couple of years ago that every single person leaving the Mike University College must have some training in special education. And of course, whether it is that you are face-to-face or online or in remote settings, there will always be that need to assess and to cater to those special needs of individuals. The fact though is that the issues that we're talking about affect everyone. Of course, it would most likely affect the persons with special abilities disproportionately. But I want to use the opportunity to also say that generally speaking, in terms of all the Industrial Revolution, the development has always been uneven. In Jamaica, we have about what, 52% internet penetration. So I believe that the access to other buildings like churches and so on is critical, but there is 44% of the country that, according to the statistics that I saw from the e-learning company of Jamaica, that is entirely without internet. So even if you were to have a building or so on, there's still that problem. The signal is just not there. And so these issues will affect everybody, but disproportionately so the persons who are specially able. And so therefore we believe that teachers need to be able to, in the context of remote learning, also able to recognize these challenges. But the key thing to me really is the technology. If the persons are not able to be reached through the technology, that's a huge problem.
All right, thank you, Bert. I see some more questions here. Science subjects at the secondary, tertiary level usually require students to do lab sessions. Are provisions being made for them? Short answers, please.
Well, we have to make use of simulations where we can to deal with that. Or there can be small groups that do face-to-face labs in a very controlled environment that can alleviate that problem as well.
All right. And how can we craft a plan that will take care of the most vulnerable within our society / that is the non-readers, using the technology as the tool bearing in mind device deficiency and network insufficiency? The same point, we raised a point earlier on, but bear in mind the fact that you have people who are non-readers, are very vulnerable. Given the fact that we have inefficient technology and not enough network connectivity, how can we craft a plan to take into consideration all of those factors?
What you see it happening now, Dr. Taylor, you have a reallocation of resources. Look what the government is proposing in inner cities. We have never had this kind of investment in these places before. So entire inner city communities now are going to have access to internet services, or else they will be left behind and the country cannot afford that. So I'm excited to see this kind of reallocation of resources happening, deal with the problems decisively. So let's root for it.
I agree, Dr.
Yes, go ahead.
Dr. Taylor.
Yeah, who's that? Yes, go ahead.
Ibrahim.
Yeah,
well, we have a plan in place. Every class that is delivered now is recorded. It's mandatory to all our lecturers, because we recollect from last semester that about 20% of our students could not be reached by internet. And as a result of that, some of them were left behind. But now we don't want to leave anybody behind. So what we do, we record, we make arrangements and get the recording to the individual students. They can listen at their own pace, at their own time. And from there, they're never left behind. And also, we try as much as possible, for example, our students across the Caribbean, how we can bring them into the virtual classroom through video conferencing. So all this we have been putting in place. And as I said earlier on, as a Center for Technology and Simulation, some of these software are equally available online, and then we guide our students, we assist them. We also subscribe to this software so that they can download it on their computer and they can learn along with the lecturer.
But may I ask the question though, Professor, how do you deliver the recording? What is the format in which you deliver the recording to the student?
Well, if you know now across Jamaica, there is a Knoxford Express that goes from here to Montego Bay.
Okay.
We have a campus in Montego Bay. It goes to Negri. In fact, I must say that when the pandemic came upon us, many of our students were suffering across the island, and we were able to raise a fund, get a food stuff, and we deliver to them, personally. So we believe if students are challenged in this regard, we'll be able to meet that need.
All right. Well, I'm looking at a clock on my wall, and I think that we perhaps are just about at the end in terms of the amount of time that is available, certainly not the amount of material that has to be covered. There's an amazing discussion taking place, and I'm here learning. I think that we are all learning from each other. And some very interesting questions are also in the chat popping up. I don't think that we're going to be able to get through all of them because I think that we're just pretty much at the end. So I'm going to throw back over to you now, Davian, maybe for the final and the comments and a wrap up, because some of us have to go outside and catch a bus from the kitchen to the bedroom. It's cyberspace, so it's a cyber bus, all right? You're using your imagination, right?
Exactly,
and it's post-modernism. You're nowhere because you might wake up and realize that you're not somewhere that you think that you're at. Right?
Exactly so.
But before you take by the mic, let me just say this, that I'm in great company. And I'm trying to look for the one teacher who is in this business of education for the money, and I have yet to find her or him. Right? And so as Connix would put it, we look for the likes, and it's an unforgiving profession in many ways, but it has its rewards later on and in ways that are intangible. For those of you, especially those of you who are in tertiary education, which of course is a panel, there is that level of responsibility because we do understand what comes with it. I was going through with Herbert Gale yesterday about some of the antecedents of violence, and we know that there's this magic 70. That's 70% of the population that's in that particular age group. That's 70% of the population that's not in our tertiary level institutions. That's 70% of people, of young men who are not employed. That's 70% of murder victims. That's 70% of homicide perpetrators. It's an amazing thing. When you look at it, when you look at the whole thing, holistically, you realize that pretty much it's the same set of boys in terms of the demographic profile who are not in post-secondary education. They're the ones who are not in hard. They're the ones who are not in the teachers' colleges, the ones who are not in the community colleges, etc., the ones who are not in the universities. Those are the ones in the same age group, went to the same schools, high school or otherwise, right, who are involved with the bright fellows who are in the gangs. So it doesn't take any rocket science, it takes social science, really, but it just takes plain intuition. And so when you change lives, and I think you understand that, when you change the lives of bright people, in particular bright young men, I don't think you even understand, even though we think we understand it, but later on down the road when you realize just how close an individual could have come to being the next major crime boss. So I want to thank you, gentlemen, for allowing me to rub shoulders with you. But for those persons who are in the audience, I like to pride myself on being very familiar with this country, and I really am. I have been to every major town, and I've visited about a quarter, I think, close to a quarter of all of the high or secondary schools, and I'm trying to see if I can get through all of them before I retire in the next couple of years, right? But I do understand deeply as we try to make the society better, to try to protect the rest of society, just how critical teaching is, just how critical. And it's not about being self-serving, because I throw up my arms and say, listen, I never spent a day in any teacher's college. So I just pretend to be an educator, right? Simply because I've been teaching at university for many, many years. But for those of you who have gone into the trenches and who are deep into it, you understand that the primary school teachers who are there listening, right? the ones who have other things to do, they have their teaching plans to do, they have everything. All of these primary and early childhood teachers. There are so many people. I keep on looking at the number of people I'm admitting, and I'm like, my gosh, I'm amazed. 300 and odd people are still in the chat, even though we have gone over. I really thank you. And there are some of us, who get popular based on the other kinds of things which are kind of less important. But I take my job as a public educator very seriously. But more importantly, I'm getting time to share space with you. You are the real ones. Thank you very much. I have nothing else to say. Davian, the rest of the proceedings are yours. Right.
Thank you very much, Dr. Taylor. You were just about to load me up because I was muted while speaking. Thank you for sparing me that embarrassment, sir. Indeed, I want to perhaps start where you ended, because I really have to commend the teachers who have stayed with us. This is 6 o'clock on a Thursday evening that we started, and between me and you and Alison Cook, who is also in this meeting, I was having a moment of panic, wondering if anybody at all would have joined us in this meeting at this hour of the day. But my teachers, you have been very kind to us. I thank you very much for staying with us, and I'm hoping that this was a beneficial and a meaningful engagement for you. I also want to thank the 4 panelists. You have certainly more than delivered what we have asked you to. I am especially pleased by the level at which you kept the discussion and just how frank you were in sharing. So to Dr. Benjamin, Dr. Edwards, Dr. Thompson, and Dr. Professor Ataguna, I really want to say thank you. And I think that there were so many issues that came out that intersect with issues that JTC is already grappling with. One of which is just that link between education and crime, and the extent to which our boys in particular are being failed by the education system. So I really thank you for this wide-ranging discussion. And of course, Dr. Taylor, we cannot say thank you enough. I think now that we have had you in this session like this, I think we certainly. Sorry, I'm distracted by the chat. I am looking at a. Okay, I'm looking at a message in the chat. I'll respond to that in a minute. Yes, Dr. Taylor, certainly having asked you to host this session and you have done it so excellently, I think you can expect us to call on you again at some point for similar activities like.
Let me load you up right now, by the way, because you are panicking. Let me tell you something, see? Right. So when me say yes, me say yes. No, you don't have to hound me, okay? If I say yes, I mean yes. Okay,
Right.
Had I said no, you'd have got the no from a long time before. Okay, right. I can't pay me for do this either. Okay, I'm doing it because my mother and my father and the primary school teachers who took the time out to help me to become the man that I am, yes. And the high school teachers, including some of them who were detractors, yes. Also helped me. It's good. So. No matter make it sound like you're discomfortable, you were panicking even though we say yes. Okay, I'll always say yes because this is important to me.
Yes,
right?
Yes, Dr. Taylor. Right. Thank you for that.
As long as I can make it, I'll do it.
It's 7:42 and we still have 290 people. I'm going to share for 2 minutes. Yes. For 2 minutes, I'm going to share an experience I had when I did a course at UWI called SY14G. That Dr. Taylor taught. And we were in a large lecture theater, very, very large lecture theater, perhaps about 200 or 300 people in the room. And the class was one of those early morning classes. And we were to finish at, say, 9 o'clock. I can't recall what time. But at any rate, we were all the way down by the medical faculty. And many of us would have to walk back to social sciences for our next class. So the custom was always that we would be let out perhaps 5 minutes or so early, so we could make the trek across campus to get to the next class. This morning in particular, Dr. Taylor had us in there a little longer than usual, and a young man had the nerve to tell Dr. Taylor that his time was up. Dr. Taylor looked down at the young man's hand, didn't see a watch, and asked him, "How do you know that my time is finished? You're not wearing a watch." The young man then had the gall to say to Dr. Taylor, I looked at your watch and I realized that it is past 9. Dr. Taylor looks at his watch, looks at the young man and says to him, my watch is fast and so are you. I tell you, that young man, as we remain friends throughout that, and it is a story that even to this day, when we see him, we remind him of that day when he went a little bit too far with a lecture. So Dr. Taylor, your frank speaking is something that I'm accustomed to, sir. So I have not at all offended. But indeed, there were a few moments of panic, but I'm thanking you for setting me right. I just want to allow Mrs. Cook Hawthorne. Mrs. Cook Hawthorne is the Senior Director here for Professional Development with the Council. I'm just going to allow her quickly to say the benedictions, which is to say goodbye and thank yous, and then we're out of here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Leslie. Now, this is a wonderful way to end FIT Day 1. And the theme for Day 1 was the awakening. And indeed, at this hour, we are still wide awake. And I noticed that Dr. Taylor had put so many questions at the end there that even Davian wanted to take it up to 8 o'clock. And I see in the chat and on the social media pages that they want this once a week. They wanted more. Well, you can join us for the next 3 days because FIT continues until Sunday. All right. And tomorrow we have innovations at its best. All right. So I want to say I'm not going to continue, but it was a wonderful discussion. I enjoyed myself immensely. And kudos to you all. And thank you so much. And everyone, please, JTC wishes for you to stay safe. Join us tomorrow again. We start at 9:30 for Day 2. And just stay well, be healthy, and good night.
Thank you. Good night. Stay safe.
Do we access the activities with the same link you gave us?
Yes, absolutely. You can join our website, our FIT website at fit.jtc.gov.jm, and all sessions are recorded and will be on the FIT website. So you can actually access these discussions again. Wonderful, wonderful discussions. Thank you all.
God bless you all. You take care.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, teachers, so we are ending this call now. So again, thank you for staying with us, and remember to be safe. COVID's still a keep.